As I said when I ran for president, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's already legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, to educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences. While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates. So today, I'm taking 3 steps to end this failed approach. First, I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana. There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result of that conviction. My pardon will remove this burden on them. Second, I'm calling on all governors to do the same for state marijuana possession offenses. Third, the federal government currently classifies marijuana as a Schedule I substance, the same as heroin and LSD, and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense. So I'm asking the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate a process to review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Even as federal and local regulations of marijuana change, important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales should stay in place. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
In a completely unexpected but welcome move, Joe Biden today pardoned all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession, a move that will affect thousands of Americans who've been charged with that crime. Biden's move today does a few things. First, obviously, it removes the conviction burden from those who've been denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities because of that crime on their record. Second, he's called on governors to follow his lead and pardon simple state marijuana possession offenses. While Biden's limited to pardoning only federal crimes, he can at least set the stage for governors to do the same at the state level. And third, and most importantly, Biden has asked the Health and Human Services Secretary and the Attorney General to initiate the process of reviewing how marijuana is scheduled under federal law, considering it's currently classified at the same level as heroin, meaning that he's not just looking to rectify the issue for those who've been impacted in the past, he's also looking to make sure that no one else's life is ruined from this senseless charge in the future. Now, we should be clear that countless advocates made this a reality, but one of those advocates is Pennsylvania Senate candidate John Fetterman. After the announcement, Fetterman took to Twitter, writing, "I spoke with POTUS last month about decriminalizing marijuana because no one should be turned down for a job or housing or volunteering at their kid's school because of some old nonviolent weed charge. This is a BFD and a massive step toward justice. Thank you, Mr. President." This has been an issue that Fetterman's advocated for years. Over a year ago, Fetterman defied Republican efforts to get him to remove a pro-legalization flag, along with a pro-LGBTQ flag, from the balcony of his office in Pennsylvania, saying, quote, "The GOP collectively shrugged when a couple of members were photographed down in D.C. on January 6th, but my pride and weed flags are a point of outrage for them?" Republicans literally passed a law to prevent Fetterman from flying the flags by tucking a provision banning unauthorized flags on Capitol grounds into an omnibus bill. You likely won't be too surprised by this, but Fetterman didn't comply, and if you think that someone was going to force him to comply, maybe you haven't seen John Fetterman. As for where Fetterman's opponent, Dr. Oz, stands on this issue, here he is making his position abundantly clear on air.
Fetterman has won statewide in Pennsylvania. He's got that going for him. He doesn't dress like a normal politician. He's always wearing hoodies and he wears shorts. He wants to legalize marijuana, I believe, which essentially, quite frankly, seems to be legal. What is your stance on that, by the way, marijuana?
You know, there are not enough Pennsylvanians to work in Pennsylvania. So giving them pot so they stay home is not, I don't think, an ideal move. I also don't want to breed addiction to marijuana. It's not physical addiction, it's emotional addiction. But I don't want young people to think they have to smoke a joint to get out of their house in the morning. We need to get Pennsylvanians back at work. You got to give them their mojo. And I don't want marijuana to be a hindrance to that. I also don't want people operating heavy machinery and driving by me when they've been taking their 4th joint of the day. But there are other issues that are plaguing Pennsylvanians. We're a border state practically, right? Because they're flying illegal immigrants up here from the border in the middle of the night, these night flights, but they're also getting their narcotics up here really easily.
What is this, a DARE campaign from the 90s? Oz tries to claim that cannabis is keeping people home from work. Has this guy ever met a human being who smokes marijuana that wasn't a sitcom character from 1997? According to Gallup, a record high of 49% of Americans have tried marijuana, while about 12% of Americans use it regularly. And yet, last time I checked, we haven't lost 10% of the US workforce to weed. It's almost like, and bear with me on this one, you could use marijuana and still go to work. Oz also says that his worry is that people are going to be operating heavy machinery after their fourth joint of the day. I'm sorry, but what mythical world is he operating in? What construction sites is Oz driving through? Who smokes 4 joints and operates an excavator? Here's how you know that Oz is actually really well placed as a Republican, because he makes up an imaginary scenario and then becomes furious and staunchly opposed to that non-existent scenario that he just made up. If you're wondering what fear porn is, you just got it. But this issue hasn't only presented itself in Pennsylvania. In Texas, Beto O'Rourke has been a vocal proponent of legalization in his state.
And when they come back and tell us, when I go to the VA, when I'm lucky enough to get into Audie Murphy, far too often, they're only willing to prescribe me an opioid, to which I may become addicted and from which I may die, as tens of thousands of our fellow Americans have. There's something, they tell me, that relieves their symptoms, their post-traumatic stress disorder, their traumatic brain injury, that increases their appetite, that allows them to sleep at night. But in Texas, they become a criminal in the eyes of the law for just trying to save their lives. That's why when we win, we're legalizing marijuana in the state of Texas. And given the fact that so many Black and brown Texans have served time for possession of a substance that is legal everywhere else in America, we are going to expunge the arrest records for anyone who has served time in the state of Texas. We're going to do right by each other.
And where does Greg Abbott, the Republican governor of Texas, stand on this issue? Exactly where you think. Texas charged more than 14,000 people with marijuana possession last year and convicted 5,000. And Abbott hasn't lifted a finger to change that. In other words, the lives of Texans ruined because of a complete non-issue, something that's perfectly legal in a raft of other states, and Greg Abbott has decided that that's fine by him. And yet, that's the same guy who's called three special legislative sessions to pass a voter suppression bill, because priorities. And let's remember, yet again, Biden and Democrats are on the same side as the majority of Americans as far as legalization is concerned. According to Gallup, support for legal marijuana is at a record high of 68% in the United States. Add that to the raft of other issues where Democrats represent the majority, including combating climate change, allowing the government to negotiate lower drug prices, making the rich pay their fair share, forgiving student loan debt, bolstering NATO, and of course, protecting a woman's reproductive rights. On issue after issue after issue, Democrats are advocating on behalf of the majority of Americans, while Republicans are advocating for a far-right extremist base that's trying to impose its theology onto everyone else. Now, with that said, there's still more that we can and should do. We need to also expunge the records of anyone with a possession charge and legalize marijuana at a national level. It is long past time to do it. And so while this doesn't get us the full way, it's a start and a message to voters that expanding our majorities in Congress with progressives will mean that we can pass legislation legalizing cannabis nationwide. In the meantime, with this move, Biden's definitely heading into midterms on a high note. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.